Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to the 2019 Mexican Grand Prix weekend at a race where of course Lewis Hamilton can wrap up his 6th Drivers' World Championship, and that really is the big talking point of the weekend. Can he do it? Well, in practice too, we're going to find out whether his car is good enough for him to be able to do that this weekend. Hopefully you guys are doing well, of course, after the 2-week break after the mental weekend at Suzuka, and hopefully today and really this weekend, you will watch along and enjoy the Mexican Grand Prix weekend. And first off today, practice 2 for said Grand Prix. And yeah, hope you guys are doing well no matter what time it is in the world, in your part of the world. And of course, for my American or North American viewers, of course, this race and the next race and the Brazilian Grand Prix is a great time for you. So yeah, that's very, very good news for you guys. But yeah, hopefully, no matter where you're on the world, even if it's very early in the morning, hopefully you guys are having a good, what is for me, Friday evening. But before we get into previewing how I think the teams are probably going to do this weekend, let's first look at the results of practice 1, which of course took place about 2 hours ago in Mexico City. Here were the results. It was a bit damp at the start of the session, so the times here are not really that representative of what we're going to see later on in the weekend. Lewis Hamilton was P1, Charles Leclerc P2, Verstappen P3, Albon P4, Bottas P5, Vettel P6, and then completing the top 10 is Sainz, Gasly, Kvyat, and Giovinazzi. And then from P11 to P20, it's Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Raikkonen, Norris, Ricciardo, Stroll, Perez, Grosjean, Russell, and Latifi, of course. Latifi doing another Friday practice drive, as we think that Nicholas Latifi is most likely going to be replacing Robert Kubica at Williams for 2020. But now let's get into the teams and how I think they're going to do in practice 2 and how I think their weekend is likely to play out. So first off, the Silver Arrows, the new world champions of 2019. Well, not new in terms of the champions in the years past, 2018, 2017, but for 2019, they are the World Constructors Champions. And this weekend, I think they will go pretty well because this circuit, as we've seen in the last couple of years, it suits cars which aerodynamically handle very well. And that car is probably still the best on the grid for grip. So I think Mercedes have a very good car for this weekend. And I think once we get later on into the weekend in qualifying in the race, I think you'll really start to see just how good that car is at this type of track. And of course, again, Lewis Hamilton can win the World Championship this weekend. I don't think he will, because I think because the car will be very good, that will allow his closest rival, Valtteri Bottas, to be on the podium, which of course Lewis Hamilton does not need if Lewis is to wrap it up here in Mexico. So I think most likely Lewis will get it done at the US Grand Prix. And to be honest, I think if Lewis was to choose where he would win it, he'd probably want to win it at the US Grand Prix because he spends a lot of time in America and he is very important to promoting, the brand of Formula One in America as well. So I think Lewis is probably more keen to win it at the US Grand Prix anyway. But, he can win it this weekend. But realistically, given the pace that I think we'll see from the top 3 teams, I just don't think that will happen. I think he might come close, but I don't think he will get it absolutely wrapped up this weekend. By the way, Lewis has to outscore Valtteri Bottas by 14 points if he is to become officially the world champion of 2019. But yeah, the car I think will be absolutely fine. Probably will be right up there fighting for race victory and pole position later on in the weekend. Next up is Ferrari. Now, of course, in the last 2 or 3 races, Ferrari, since that upgrade at Singapore, have been very good. But still, aerodynamically, they are not as good as Mercedes and Red Bull. And because of the altitude here that really does eliminate, not entirely, but mostly the differences in power output. And because Ferrari, of course, are so good when it comes to the power unit, but because they're still behind the other 2 top teams when it comes to grip, I don't see Ferrari this weekend having what could be considered a good weekend. I just don't see it because I don't think the Ferrari car will be good enough when it matters in certain parts of the track, such as the S's in the middle sector and the stadium section. I don't think the Ferrari car will be good enough to really go well, in those parts of the track to be right up there fighting for pole of the race victory. Yes, in qualifying pace, Ferrari can be very strong, but they were very strong when it came to pace in qualifying last year, and last year in qualifying they were 4th and 6th, I think. So yeah, I don't think Ferrari are really going to have that good of a weekend. I think when we get to the race next weekend in COTA, I think Ferrari will be right at the front fighting for victory, no doubt about it. But this weekend, I just don't see it. I don't see how Ferrari can do it. And especially on Sunday, tyre wear is a big problem for all the teams. And Ferrari are one of the worst teams when it comes to tyre wear. They really do punish their tyres a lot compared to other teams. So, yeah, I don't think Ferrari are in for that good of a weekend. One team, though, that I think is in for a good weekend is Red Bull. Because, again, the altitude eliminates the differences in power output. And that allows Red Bull, as we saw in 2017 and 2018, to have such a good car here in Mexico. And I'd have to say, as I said in my preview, by the way, if you haven't seen my preview for this Grand Prix, the link below to that is in the description down below. I said in that, and I'll say it again, the favourites for this weekend have to be Red Bull and Max Verstappen, because in the last 2 race weekends at this Grand Prix, that combination has been near impossible to beat. Of course, Max did not get pole in 2017 or 2018, but in 2018, Red Bull locked out the front row. And in the race, their pace was clearly better than anyone else. And I don't see how their car is really that much different to how it was this time last year in comparison to what Ferrari and Mercedes have. So I think Red Bull, Max Verstappen have to be the favourites. Also, do look out for Alex Albon, because if the Red Bull car is as good compared to Mercedes and Ferrari as it was last year, then this could be the weekend where Albon gets his first podium. And if he does, then that will basically confirm his seat at Red Bull Racing for 2020, which I think he's going to get anyway, because he has been better than Gasly was in his first 6 or 7 races with Red Bull. So yeah, look out for Red Bull. They are going to be very competitive, and this will be probably the first race since, I'd say, Hungary, where I think Red Bull do have a very, very good chance of winning. I really do think that can happen. But now, let's go into the midfield. First off, Renault. Well, the last fortnight or so for Renault has not been good. They were disqualified from the results of the Japanese Grand Prix because they were using an illegal driver aid on their car. It wasn't actually illegal when it came to the technical regulations, but it was illegal when it came to the sporting regulations that state that a driver must drive alone and unaided, and having I guess, an automatic brake bias system is, a driver aid, according to the FIA. By the way, I am going to do a video on this whole Renault thing, but it won't come out until after the US Grand Prix, because I want to make sure I, read through the FIA technical statement and make sure I get all the facts right before I come out with the video about, have Renault cheated, the implications and stuff like that. But yeah, not good for Renault, because they lost, how many points? I think 9 points now from that Grand Prix, and they're only 6 points ahead of Toro Rosso now in the Constructors, and only 10 ahead, I think, of Racing Point, or 13. So yeah, not good for Renault, and they are now massively under threat going forward for the rest of 2019 for a top 5 finish in the Constructors. And also, interesting news, which I'll also go deeper into with that Renault video coming out after this, back-to-back race, Mexico and the US Grand Prix, is that at the next big board meeting of the Renault company, they will discuss whether they are going to continue in Formula 1 or not as a, well, really not only as an engine supplier, but, as a works team, because of course after 2020, Renault are not supplying their power units to anyone else. So if they do leave at the end of 2020 or 2021, then Renault as a whole will be gone. So yeah, that's big news. That has come out, I think it came out a few hours ago. But yeah, Renault, who knows? They might be out of Formula 1 very soon. But yeah, going into this weekend, I think the pace of the car will be all right. I don't think they're going to have a great weekend. They're not going to be as good as McLaren. We know that for a fact. They might be able to get into the top 10. But again, as I said in my preview, them, Toro Rosso especially, Racing Point with Sergio Perez, who's keen to have a good home race result. It's going to be a tough fight for Renault to finish in the points of both cars because they don't have, fundamentally at the moment, a quick enough car to be easily finishing in the top 10 in one lap pace or race pace. They really do not have that quick of a car at the moment. But one team who does is, of course, McLaren. And this man, Carlos Sainz, in practice one, and really in 2019 has been so consistent at being in the top 10 in the McLaren, even at races where the McLaren has not really been that competitive. So yeah, McLaren this weekend, they'll be fine. Again, the engine difference being eliminated, that'll help McLaren be even closer to the top 3 teams. Maybe if there's chaos on Sunday, McLaren might be able to get a top 4 or top 5 finish again. But yeah, I think McLaren will have another good weekend. Carlos Sainz last year went very well here and was on for a P7 or P6 finish. Then his car failed him at the Renault, of course, he was in at the time. So Carlos Sainz will be good here. Lando Norris, I think kind of similar to Suzuka. He may struggle a bit compared to his teammate, only because really Lando has never raced here before. I think he did practice one in 2018, but again, that is really completely different to, doing an entire weekend. So I think Carlos Sainz is going to be ahead of Lando Norris this weekend, and McLaren should be at the front of the midfield pack. Next up is Alfa Romeo. Alfa, well, their season has really fallen apart after the summer break ended, because going into the second half of the season after the summer break finished, I thought Alfa could get a top 5 finish in the Constructors if they kept up the great results and pace from the first half of the season that they had most of the time. But in the second half of the season, they rarely scored points. I think, Antonio Giovinazzi scored points in Monza and Singapore, but I think that's the only time they have since the summer break finished. So, yeah, not a good second half of the season for Alfa, and that means that they're P8 in the Constructors and their season is basically finished. And because of the way their car's been as of late, I don't see how Alfa are going to have a good weekend. Actually, in practice one, that Alfa Romeo was off the track so many times at turn 1. It was unbelievable how many times they were going off the circuit. But yeah, I think Alfa are in for quite a poor weekend. And also, more interesting news that has come out in the Italian press and has been reported on by F1 journalist who's been around for a long time in the Formula 1 world, Joe Ward, I think it is. I can't pronounce his final name. It is hard to pronounce. He has come out with a story that Alfa Romeo, the company, are looking possibly to leave Formula 1 at the end of 2020 because Alfa and Sauber are not exactly getting on that well, apparently. And also Sauber are not happy at being basically a Ferrari B team, who of course the Ferrari Works team, and they want to be their own team. They want to be their, they want to control their own destiny, so to say. And apparently they may be talking to Honda for a engine supply deal from 2021 on. Now, you guys will know that before Frederick Vasseur, who is now the team principal of Alfa / Sauber, but just before he came in, Sauber were going to be partnering with Honda from 2018 on. But then he came in, got the Ferrari up-to-date power unit that they didn't have in 2017, and then basically secured a a Ferrari B team status for Sauber and then with Alfa Romeo. If this is true, then it is a bit surprising because Alfa have only been in Formula 1 for what, 2 years really, since they've returned. And it would be a bit abrupt if they just, got up and left basically Formula 1. I will say though, there is a part of this that doesn't surprise me because Sauber, I understand their point of view if that point of view is actually correct. Again, this story is a report. This isn't, confirmed to be true. It's a rumor currently going on in the Formula 1 world. If it is true from Sauber's perspective that they don't want to be a Ferrari B team, I can see their point because if you look at Sauber's history, most of the time they've been their own individual team. Yes, they were BMW and then basically now they are a Ferrari B team. But most of the time, they've been able to control their own destiny, and I think that's exactly what Sauber want. And I'm not surprised that that is what they want going forward. So part of me is surprised, but also not surprised when it comes to that story. We'll see if this turns out to be true once we get into 2020 again. It's only a rumor. It could be absolute BS. We don't know yet, but I'm just saying it now, so if it does come true, you guys will have known that this is a possibility for a while. Next up is Haas F1. Well, Haas have never gone well at the Mexican Grand Prix. They've never had a good car. Their car just is never suited to this track. And I don't see how Haas F1 this weekend are going to have a weekend that they could call good, really. So we'll move on from them and go on to Toro Rosso. And again, because of the high altitude we're racing at, Toro Rosso should be quite quick in this weekend's Grand Prix, especially after the race at Suzuka where they were very quick with their car. And really Toro Rosso's aim, because Renault lost those points from Suzuka and now Renault are, say, vulnerable at the moment in terms of their mentality going forward for the rest of 2019. Toro Rosso have got to capitalise on that and they've got to really start pushing and getting at Renault now, because if Toro Rosso are going to beat Renault in the Constructors, then really these next two races they've got to beat them, because if Renault beat them in both races, even if Renault only outscored them by a point, the momentum will then be with Renault in the final two races for Renault to claim, fifth in the Constructors. So, considering this weekend with the Toro Rosso car, it should be a very strong one. They've got to capitalise on that, and they've really got to get after Renault and somehow, some way, finish ahead of them and outscore them. If they can outscore them by more than 6 points and overtake them, then that's great news. But realistically, if they keep outscoring Renault in the final four races, then I think Toro Rosso will just about beat Renault to fifth in the Constructors. And of course, Toro Rosso, who will not be called Toro Rosso, of course, in 2020, they'll be called AlphaTauri. Toro Rosso have never finished in the top 5 in the Constructors before. So history is awaiting Toro Rosso. We just need to see whether they're actually going to achieve that by the end of the season. But another team that can absolutely get involved is Racing Point, and really the same goes for Racing Point. If they are going to overtake Toro Rosso and Renault for fifth in the Constructors, they've got to start right here, getting the results and finishing ahead of both Toro Rosso and Renault and outscoring them, because they don't want to leave themselves, with too much work to do in the final two or the final race of the season to climb the Constructors. And you guys may be thinking, well, is it really that important for Racing Point to climb the Constructors? Maybe they should be concentrating on 2020. Well, the money difference between finishing P7 and P5 is a lot in the Constructors table, and it would be massive for Racing Point if they finish P5 in the Constructors. Same for Toro Rosso as well, even though Toro Rosso are never really going to have money trouble because they're owned by Red Bull, of course. But for Racing Point, if they could get into the top 5 in the constructors by the end of 2019, that would be a massive result for a season where Racing Point have not really been that great. So if they can get it, they've got to try their absolute utmost to, if they want to help themselves financially going forward into 2020, 2021 and the new era of Formula One. It's very important for Racing Point to climb the constructors. And of course, it is Sergio Perez's home race. So if Perez has a weekend with no trouble, I think Perez will absolutely be in that top 10, especially after the last 2 or 3 races where Perez has been very good. So yeah, Racing Point, a big weekend for them. And finally, of course, is Williams. Williams, this weekend, the biggest news with them, I guess, is that they're testing the new front wing against the old front wing. So hopefully that does work for Williams and they find a lot more speed with the new front wing on their car. But guys, with just under 9 minutes to go until practice 2 gets underway, let me know what you think about what I've discussed. And for the teams for this weekend, how do you think they'll do? Let me know in the comments section down below. And let me know in the live chat right now. And I'll make sure to read out a couple of your comments before the practice 2 session gets underway in Mexico City. So yeah, make sure to put your comments in the chat. Also, though, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as we'll be doing a watch along for qualifying and the race tomorrow and on Sunday. And for the final 3 races after this weekend, we'll also be doing a practice 2, qualifying and race watch along for the US, Brazilian and Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So don't forget to subscribe for that consistent content, that consistent race weekend content. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Or you can go to my homepage, do it there, and hit the notifications bell if you want to be notified to when I upload. And also hit the like button down below. Really does help out the channel grow and shows me that you guys do enjoy the content. But quickly, before I come to you guys, I'm going to have a quick drink and then I'll read out some of your comments. And now we'll quickly move on to a couple final pictures. Also, before I read out, a few of your comments, your final comments, I want you guys, after this stream is finished, to check out something. There is a link in below, or down below, in between the 2 parts of the description. An interview I did with the guys, or Jordan, from the F1 debate show, and that video was put out a couple days ago. Now, if you guys want to know my story on this website and how, it has gone since I started uploading videos, and if you want to know really the man behind the content, which I am, then make sure to watch that interview. It's just over an hour long. We talk about, my time on YouTube, what I do outside of what I do, and what my goals for the future are as well. So that video, it says F1 YouTubers Decoded, and then of course my channel name, and then the link is there. So after the stream is finished, something falls off my desk. That scared me very much. Yeah, make sure to check that out. Link below in the description after the stream is finished, and yeah, just over an hour long, and it was a good thing to do to really get my story out there about who I am, and also my story of, what I've done on this website. So if you haven't seen it yet, then make sure to go and check that out. And we'll now move on to a different picture. Go. Charles Leclerc. By the way, Charles Leclerc, I think, has got a new haircut this weekend from what I've seen. And we'll move on to a different picture in a moment that should show it. Anyway. Faith, thank you, Chazza. No problem. Thank you for watching. Mostly an F1 fan. Thoughts on the Miami race. Can't speak. I still don't think it'll happen. And I've actually seen stories of local government officials trying to not just stop it, but quote, kill it. Kill the project dead. So, yeah. I'll be honest, I don't want to race in Miami. Not because I don't want to race in that part of the world. Doesn't matter about that. It's the track that they have suggested. It's literally Sochi 2.0, but in America and a lot hotter. And I just don't think it is the right move. And by the sounds of it, it is still not going to happen. And I don't know why they can, I know they want to have different races in America, but why not just concentrate on making the US Grand Prix in Texas the best race they can make it to be? Because that track is one of the best tracks in Formula One that has come onto the calendar in the last few years. I don't understand why they're looking for other races in America when that racetrack is so good for racing. As now the F1 intro plays, so practice 2 underway in 4 minutes time. Right, let's look at some other comments. Finley asks, did you see Renault pretty much confirm they're leaving F1? Well, they didn't confirm it, but let's say that, even discussing it is kind of admittance that your project has failed and you're looking for an out. So I kind of agree with you there, but we'll see what happens with the board meeting. I wouldn't be surprised if Renault left Formula One. They've done it so many times before. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if they left again. But if they did leave this time, they wouldn't continue with engine supply. They would leave entirely. So that would be a big thing for Formula One going forward. But then again, Renault, you have to say, have failed in the V6 hybrid era, and got to wonder, are they ever going to succeed in the V6 hybrid era? I mean, yeah, they won races with Red Bull, but that wasn't because of the Renault power unit. Red Bull won races since 2014 because the Red Bull car was so good, or they got lucky. There was no race that was won since 2014 with the Renault in the back of the Red Bull that was because of the power. There's absolutely no chance of that. So you have to say Renault, again, in this V6 hybrid era, they failed, and I wouldn't be surprised if they left, to be honest. And we'll go on to this final picture. By the way, I know some people out there don't quite know who some of the Ferrari personnel are. So you can see there Charles Leclerc in the middle of the two guys to the left and right of him. I think that's a new haircut. You can see to the left of him on our view, that's Jock Clear, very experienced Formula One engineer, won the World Championship with Williams, with Jacques Villeneuve. He was at Braun, Mercedes, teams like that, BAR. But the guy on the far right of our screen, and let me see if I can zoom in. That guy on the far right, that is the infamous Ferrari strategist Inaki Rueda. So if you didn't know what he looked like, that's him on the far right of our screen. There you go. Just in case you guys didn't know, because I know most people don't even know what he looks like, because most engineers are very, hidden in Formula One or, team personnel. But yeah, on the far right, that is the infamous Ferrari strategist Inaki Rueda. Right, let's read out a couple comments, final comments. They could do Sebring instead of Miami. There's plenty of tracks they could do. There's plenty of IndyCar tracks they use that they could do, even though they're never going to go there because the spectator areas are not exactly great, like Road America. That's definitely a better track. I still would rather go back to the Indianapolis track we used for Formula One between 2000 and 2007, because that was a better track than the one they are, I guess, proposing for 2021 and on. But yeah, I want to race in Miami, but I want the track to be good, because if the track's not good and doesn't produce good racing, then what is the point in racing there? There isn't any point. But anyway, before we get into session, just got to update the text quickly. Let me do that. Go. There you go. Remaining in FP2. And I'll get the timer ready, of course. Practice 2 is a 90-minute session. And because the track was a bit damp this morning, I'm expecting teams to go out a bit earlier so they can continue the dry running that they had at the very end of the session. As currently, we are looking at Carlos Sainz in the McLaren with a bit of a Movember going on. And now we're looking inside the McLaren cockpit, seeing the seat that Carlos sits on when he's in the car. And the session should be underway in just a moment. Actually, it's underway now, but they haven't shown the timer yet. So I'll make sure to sync up the timer in a moment. And we might as well get up the running order. So there you go. By the way, just to let you guys know who are new to the channel, we do not show live footage for obvious copyright reasons. So what I'll do is provide a radio commentary, show a slideshow of pictures that will play one picture every 3 minutes. And I'll have the running order running along the bottom of the screen to show you guys who are watching the stream what the live order is. But if you can't watch but can only listen, then don't worry, I'll keep you guys up to date with what is happening live at the track. So let me now get that slideshow up. There you go. And I will get the timer up in just a moment. In about 5 seconds time, as the 2 Alfa Romeos are on track. And there you go. And let me just add a little space. That text. Oh. Just, there you go. So, hour and 20 minutes to go in practice 2 here in Mexico. By the way, the running order you see there, that is not the live running order. That is the running order from the last Watchalong we did, which of course was the race at Suzuka, that mental day where we had, where I uploaded, 4 videos in 8 hours, which was, yeah, truly mental. That's one video every 2 hours on average. As we're seeing replays of people going off in practice 1. So let's see what you guys are saying in the chat still. Lumberjack says Vegas has Caesar's Palace circuit, but it's like a glorified version of Austria with a straight, then a back and forth of straight to hairpin. Yeah, they had a circuit out there for Formula 1, but I don't think it was that great. But if you're going to go to a street track, make the street track as best as you can. Don't just, race at a certain venue just to race at a certain venue. Because if the races are boring, then people start to turn on the venue, which is what you don't want. So they've got to make a good track, or the best track they can, with what they have at that particular venue. As currently, Antonio Giovinazzi is on his first timed run on the medium compound tyres and is currently heading into turn 7 and starting the S's, and the Alfa looks horribly slow at the moment. Either the track is very dirty or the Alfa has no grip whatsoever. I think it's a bit of both. And now opens the DRS. By the way, 3 DRS zones for this Grand Prix. There's now a new DRS zone between turn 11 and turn 12. Of course, turn 12 is the right-hander that puts you then into the stadium section part of the track. As Antonio Giovinazzi rounds the final corner and sets a horribly slow, don't know what time it is because they're not showing it, but it looked horribly slow on board as Kimi Räikkönen goes faster. And the other cars on track right now, Lando Norris, Daniel Ricciardo and Robert Kubica. Russell did come out on track a minute ago, but has come back into the pits for some reason. And currently looking at Nico Hülkenberg in the garage, waiting before he goes out. And here comes Lewis Hamilton slowly getting ready to come out on track. And also Valtteri Bottas getting ready as well. And I'd love if FOM actually showed cars on track, because that is way more interesting than Lewis Hamilton getting ready to come out, as here we go. Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo are very close to one another on the outlaps through the stadium, as they're both on the medium compound tyres. And here comes Lando Norris to start his first timed run of practice 2, as the sun is now starting to come out at this track. And Norris opens the DRS and now goes down this absolutely phenomenal straight. It's so long. One of the longest in Formula 1 for sure. As Norris now comes through turn 1, turn 2, and turn 3. And a bit of oversteer on the exit of turn 3, but that's all okay as he now opens the DRS now down to turn 4. And for some reason, we're not seeing sector times at all. I don't know why, but I love to see sector times and lap times right now to see what the lap times are, but they're not showing it. As Norris is on a lap, and so is Daniel Ricciardo, both on medium tyres. And already the McLaren in the S's looks a lot better than the Alfa. Still not great, but a lot better than the Alfa. The Alfa looked as though it was on race fuel. As Norris now comes into the final sector, the stadium section, into turn 13, and then into turn 14, and into the final corner comes Norris, and he will probably go P1. Yes, he does. But again, we're not seeing lap times for some reason. There you go. Lando Norris has done a 1:19.6. Raikkonen has done a 1 minute 20.2, and Giovinazzi's in a 1 minute 20.6. Daniel Ricciardo goes P4, 1.4 seconds down, as Sebastian Vettel has come out onto the track, and he is currently, Sebastian, on an outlap. Seeing a replay of Norris bumping through the S's, bumping over the curbs, and Raikkonen actually on the hard compound tyres, and Raikkonen locking up going down into turn 1 and had to go quite wide. I don't know if that was on his actual lap. Don't think it was, but in practice 1, that Alfa was going off the track so many times. It's not gripping up at all to this track. As also Charles Leclerc and Lance Stroll are on track on an outlap at the moment. As we're currently looking at Sebastian Vettel, who's currently 5th in the drivers' standings, but is on the same amount of points as Max Verstappen. So Vettel can climb the table still with 4 races to go, as Sebastian rounds the final corner and gets his lap underway. As Nico Hülkenberg now is getting strapped into his car. Wish Sky F1 would stop doing this double camera thing, but oh well. As Vettel comes down to turn 1 on the medium tyres. And car looks okay through the first 2 or 3 turns. Not great. Gets a bit straddled on the exit curve of turn 3. And Vettel now completes the first sector, where I assume he has gone purple in that sector. And now comes into turn 5 and 6. Ferrari definitely not looking, handling-wise, as good as the Red Bull or Mercedes that we saw this morning, and that we'll see in a moment. Ferrari not really looking that great aerodynamically at this track, and that's not really a surprise. As Sebastian Vettel now heads into the final sector, into turn 13. Lost the rear a bit on the exit of turn 12. As he now comes through the final corner, as Sebastian Vettel, I think, will go into P1. And does he? Yes, he does, by about a second. So Sebastian Vettel now P1. As now we've got Leclerc, Stroll and Verstappen currently on a lap, and Grosjean, Albon, Magnussen and Perez are on an outlap. So the drivers are progressively coming out on track, as Leclerc there bumping over the orange sausage curb at turn 2, I believe. And then at turn 4, Oh, opposite lock through turn 4. That's a bit weird. That's not really that fast of a corner to be getting opposite lock, but there you go. As here is Max Verstappen on the medium compound tyres. And yeah, that Red Bull definitely looking good. And he's done a purple first and second sector as Max Verstappen. As he now comes into the final sector, but locks up into turn 13 and blows at least half a second in that corner alone. And will he still go P1? I don't think he will. And no, he goes second, but was only a quarter of a tenth slower than Vettel. So it just shows you how quick the Red Bull is. And by the way, the Red Bull of Max Verstappen was on the medium tyres, just like Sebastian Vettel was. So that Red Bull looking very good. We're getting a slow-mo of Max Verstappen going through the middle sector. And also a replay of Verstappen going through the turn 3, or going on the turn 3 exit curb. Here is a replay of Verstappen into turn 13 and simply locked the inside front and yet blew about half a second, because if you lock the inside front going into turn 13, it affects your entry into turn 14 and then 15. As here comes home driver Sergio Perez on the hard compounder. Charles Leclerc goes P1 by half a second. Good lap by Charles Leclerc. Now we're about to cut to on Sky F1. Kimi Raikkonen, I think, just goes P5. We're now cutting to Martin Brundle trackside, so we're not going to see any times or who is going where in the running order for probably a couple minutes. So let's see what you guys have to say in the chat. Ash Shaven, Chaz says, since you don't feel Ferrari has enough to win this weekend, then I'm going to go with Ferrari winning this weekend. Well, you can do that, but I don't think Ferrari are going to win this weekend. I just don't think, even if they get pole, I don't think Ferrari have anywhere near enough grip to keep the tyres alive enough times over the 71 laps to win the race. I just don't see it. I think the Red Bull and the Mercedes is easily, in the corners, better than the Ferrari. And again, with the differences in power being a lot shorter this weekend because of the altitude, I just don't think Ferrari are going to be that quick. Definitely not as quick as they were at Suzuka or Russia or Singapore. As plenty of cars now out on track. Valtteri Bottas now out on track on the hard compound tyre. And yeah, nearly every car on circuit, but we're not seeing right now where people are going in the top 20 running order at the moment. But as soon as they come back from this, I'll be able to tell you what the running order actually is. By the way, I will say, though, it is good to see Martin Brundle back at the races, because, of course, he missed Russia and Suzuka. So, yeah, good to see Martin back in the Formula 1 paddock at Formula 1 weekend, as Norris goes through turn 5, still on his medium compound tyres. Connor says Mercedes will win. Yeah. It's definitely a likelihood that that can happen. Of course, they won here in 2015 and 2016. But that was mostly because they had so much of an advantage at normal tracks that in Mexico, despite it being a lot closer, they still had the best car because their car was so dominant. If you look at, say, Ferrari, who at a normal track and a normal weekend, as Charles Leclerc just spun off at turn 1, I think. At a normal weekend, Ferrari have the best car when it comes to qualifying, but they don't have a car that is, you know, dominant over other teams. They don't have that at the moment. As Leclerc, yeah, there you go, comes down into turn 1, and on the downshift, and slightly on the curb, his car spins round. So maybe that might be either driver error or it might be a slight gearbox problem, because sometimes when your car spins on downshift, that can be a gearbox issue. As look at the traffic for Carlos Sainz here. So many cars in the way. Red Bull, for a Racing Point, a Mercedes in there. As by the way, Sebastian Vettel has gone back up to P1 in the Ferrari. And Carlos Sainz comes to the line to set his first time of the session and goes P4. Good run for Carlos Sainz. And we've only got about 2 more drivers, really, to set their first time of the session before I do the running order. For some reason, Russell has not done a time yet, so maybe he has a problem with his car. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton now on a lap. And I think in a moment so will be. No, Red Bull in the wall. I think it's Alex Albon in the wall at turn 7, and it's a red flag. Red flag. Albon has done exactly what Sebastian Vettel did in 2015, I think. Put it in the wall on the entry to turn 7. So another crash for Albon, and that's exactly what he did not need, considering how quick the car is going to be this weekend. And of course, he is still trying to impress Horner and Marco at the top of the Red Bull team. Let me just adjust this picture quickly. Go. Yeah, he's in the wall, and he is out of the session, most likely. Here's a replay. Turns in. And car spins, and he goes into the wall. I think he might have took a bit too wide of an entry. Yeah. Yeah, that's what happened. So, he put the car wide for the left-hand turn-in and spun it off the curb. As we're now on board. And yeah, the curb unsettled the car, and he spun round and went into the wall. Exactly what Alex Albon does not need. By the way, the running, or the timer, sorry, will continue running because, of course, in practice sessions, the timer still continues even during a red flag. But now we have a red flag, I will do the order. So, it is Sebastian Vettel in P1. Charles Leclerc is in second place, and then third is Max Verstappen, as they're now trying to get that car out of the barriers. And yeah, I don't think Albon will be going out again in this session. He's not that far away from the pits, but I don't think they're going to fix it that quickly. Yeah, Vettel, Leclerc, Verstappen, your top 3. Carlos Sainz is P4. Lando Norris is in P5, so good there for McLaren. And then Kimi Raikkonen is 6th on the hard compound tyres. So Raikkonen, in terms of lap time, not looking that bad. And then it is Bottas in P7. And completing the top 10 is Gasly, Magnussen, and Ricciardo. So that's your top 10. We just do it now. And yet Lewis Hamilton, by the way, has not completed a lap. So don't worry, Lewis Hamilton fans. His car is fine. He just was unable to complete a lap there because of Albon putting it in the wall. And then from P11 to P20, it is Daniel Kvyat in P11. And then 12th is Italian of Antonio Giovinazzi. And yet still removing the car, they are at the moment. And for some reason, get it back. There you go. For some reason, it went away. I think it's to do with my hotkey settings. The reason that keeps going away. I'll have to fix that in a moment. Giovinazzi is 12th, and then it is Stroll in 13th place. Let me just rewind and make sure I get the running order correct, you guys. And then, yeah, Stroll 13th, Perez is in 14th place. And then it is Grosjean 15th. Alex Albon is in 16th place. And then it is Kubica, Russell, Hamilton, and Hülkenberg. Again, though, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Hülkenberg have not been able to set a lap because they didn't go out at the start of the session. And also, Albon causing the red flag meant they couldn't obviously complete a lap. So there you go, Hamilton 19th and Nico Hülkenberg in 20th position. There's your running order with just under an hour and 10 minutes left in practice 2. As they're still trying to recover that car. So it's going to take a bit of time before they get rid of the car. So let's see what you guys have to say in the what you guys are saying in the chat. And also, I might as well plug my other stuff whilst we are waiting for the red flag to finish. As Tonka, one of my moderators, just said in the chat, don't forget to join our Discord server. Link below in the description. That server has about, 400 people in that server. But also, very importantly, it is the best place for notifications for my videos and streams, because obviously the notification system on this website is broken. So the Discord server is the best place for notifications, my videos and streams. So don't forget to join that. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110. Check out my website, chazerhd.com. Again, link down below. And also like me on Facebook. That's ChazerHDF1 on Facebook. And again, don't forget to subscribe for Watchalong is coming up later this weekend. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or go to my homepage and do it there, and hit the notifications bell. Comment down below later what you think of this video and what you thought of the session, and also hit the like button down below as well. As they continue to move the Red Bull of Alex Albon. JB saying Albon's agent be like, as of today, you are no longer an employee of this organization. And let me just update that or adjust that picture. Well, if you play the F1 game, you know exactly what that means. There you go. See what you guys are saying quickly before we get into the rest of this session. Anthony Dick says, thanks for this video. It's great. No problem. Thank you for watching. Right, let's find some other comments here. JB saying that will dent his confidence. I really want him to get a podium. Probably one of my favourites in F1. He's a good guy, Albon. And it would be nice to see him get a podium this weekend. But stuff like that is, completely unnecessary. It's unnecessary, especially when the Red Bull car is going to be good this weekend anyway. So it's not like he has to push his car beyond the limit like you would have to at Spa or Monza in that car to, get a great lap time and be competitive with Ferrari and Mercedes. So, yeah, unnecessary, I think, for Albon to do that. Again, considering how quick Red Bull are going to be this weekend. Right, let's find some other comments from you guys. Mr. Random Guy saying Ferrari are like Mercedes in 2013, would you say? Yeah, I would. I think they are basically the same. In qualifying, they have the best configuration for a qualifying session. But in the race, unless they can just control the, the pace of the Grand Prix and control the pack behind, then they're going to lose races, even if they get pole positions or lock out front rows, because they kill their tyres so quickly. And that's because fundamentally the 2019 Ferrari car is designed to have less drag and to be less aerodynamically efficient. So, you know, it's Ferrari's problem and they've got to sort it. And hopefully Ferrari 2020, they can go back to the shorter wheelbase Red Bull kind of design that they had in 2017. Because I think Ferrari actually, if you take away the power unit, aerodynamically, the best Ferrari car we've seen since they last won a world championship, the best aerodynamic car Ferrari have produced was the 2017 Ferrari. If they had the power they had now back then, Ferrari would have dominated that season. But since they've, you know, made progression in power, they've, for some reason, started to design their car to be less aerodynamically efficient by, you know, lengthening the wheelbase and just designing their car to have less drag, which doesn't really make sense. I think if you're going to win a world championship, you've got to have the best combination of, you know, grip and power. That's why Mercedes have won in 2019, because they have enough power to be, you know, at power tracks as competitive at times as teams who have more power. But then when it comes to tracks where you need a good amount of grip or a lot of grip, they completely dominate. And that's why Mercedes in 2019 have had a car that has been good enough at basically every track to win. You need to have, you know, a combo of both. You know, you have to be good enough on both ends, grip and power. Ferrari, when it comes to power, they are the best. Grip, they're nowhere near still. Red Bull, the opposite. They've got great grip, but not enough power. So, hopefully, in 2020, Ferrari go back to the design concept they had in 2017, because if they have that for 2020 and their power advantage continues, which it probably will, I don't see why Ferrari won't have the best car next year, but it's up to Ferrari making the right decisions going forward in terms of the design of the 2020 Ferrari car, whatever it's called. And also, with the Ferrari, Mr. Random Guy was saying that it is like a 2013 Mercedes, but also it is very similar to a 2002 Williams BMW, where that season also Williams were great in qualifying, getting pole position, locking out the front row, but in the race, because the tyre wear was so bad on their car, they couldn't even compete in the race. I mean, at times in the race, even though they got pole, they'd end up half a minute or a minute off the race victory, if not being lapped. So, I mean, Ferrari, they have similar problems to those teams, but again, they've got to try in 2020 and try and get a combination of both, you know, enough grip with the power they have, and then they can really compete in 2020. Mr. Landman says the session will continue, or the red flags will come in about a minute's time. That's good. We have just over an hour to go until the end of the session. The running order you see along the bottom of your screen for now, because Sky F1 are currently on an ad break, is the live running order. So it's Vettel, Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz, Norris, Raikkonen, Bottas, Gasly, Magnussen, Ricciardo, and then I think after that it's Daniel Kvyat in P11, and then Giovinazzi, Stroll, Perez, Grosjean, Kubica, not Kubica in 16th, I think it is Kvyat, I can't remember. You can see now as it comes around, so Kvyat P11, Giovinazzi P12, and then Stroll, Perez, Grosjean, and then Albon, of course, who has crashed out of practice too, and that's why we have, or had, a red flag, and then it is Kubica, Russell, Hamilton, and Hülkenberg completing the order. Shaven, do you think Ferrari is cheating with the power advantage, as some are suggesting? No, I don't think they are. I think the reason they are those teams inquiring is because simply they don't understand how Ferrari are getting the power they are. Because if they finally understand how Ferrari are doing it, then they will start to do it. That, I think, is what they're most likely trying to find out. I don't think they're trying to get the Ferrari power unit banned. I mean, of course, in an ideal world, they will try to do that, but it's not going to happen. I think, again, they're trying to find out what Ferrari are doing to get the power they have. And what I think they're doing is they've got a twin battery, electrical battery system that allows them to produce the amount of power electrically from their power unit like they do. That's what I think it is, but again, we don't know because Ferrari are very secretive when it comes to, what exactly they are doing with their power unit that causes them to have the power they have. But yeah, I don't think the teams are trying to get them, thrown out of a race weekend or anything. I just think it's down to finding out what they're doing so they can do the same and catch up, because Ferrari are clearly the trendsetters when it comes to the V6 hybrid power units. Let's look at one final comment, I think, and then we will go to we'll get back into this session as cars are now back on track. Yeah, we'll get back into the session in a moment. The final comment, I can't see one at the moment, so I'll leave that till later on. Let me just update this picture of a Haas. I think it. Yeah, there you go. Kevin Magnussen. As the cars are back on track, with just under an hour to go, 58 minutes to go, and we've got cars back on track. As we're seeing a slow-mo replay of Carlos Sainz. Verstappen, Sainz, Norris, Raikkonen, Bottas, Gasly, Kvyat, Giovinazzi, Stroll, Kubica, Hülkenberg, Hamilton and Russell are the cars that are on track. As Kimi Raikkonen goes 5th in the Alfa, Max Verstappen, as now Gasly goes 5th. Max Verstappen has done a purple middle sector. Can Max go P1? Let's see. I don't think he will. Comes to the line. No, he doesn't. He goes P2. About a tenth of a second behind Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari. But I'll update the running order again, guys. Once Hamilton and Hülkenberg, for sure, set a much more competitive lap time. As here comes Lewis Hamilton to the line, and Lewis Hamilton goes P3, 2 tenths down on Vettel. So a good early run there for Lewis Hamilton. Yellow flag in sector 3, and Valtteri Bottas on the hard compound tyres has spun it coming into the stadium section. Probably trying to warm up his tyres. He's completely spun it, and now he's cut the entire turn 13 and 14 out and get going on his lap, but, well, he's not going to be very quick because I think he has burnt his tyres out already by spinning there on the hard compound. So not good there by Valtteri Bottas. Here's a replay. So he passes a slow McLaren of Norris on the inside down to turn 12, locks up, and then as the car gets near the exit curve, the car just spins. So I think that's more cold tyres. Valtteri there. And yep, he gets going again soon after that. And here is a replay of Carlos Sainz locking the inside front at turn 1 and has to go across the grass. And then rejoins at turn number 3. And hopefully in a moment, we'll see where Nico Hülkenberg in the second Renault has gone. And Hülkenberg went up to P7. So, pretty good run there. By the way, we'll see, obviously, as we get into the weekend more so. But apparently, there is a 1 second time difference between the soft and the medium compound tyre. So, that is very interesting. Going into the rest of the weekend, very interesting. and it will make things interesting. Of course, once we get into qualifying and you know the big teams are trying to start on the harder compound of tyre, as Valtteri Bottas now starts a lap on the hard compound tyres. Currently P11, but he can go a lot faster, and let's see if he does. As Stroll goes up to P12 in the racing point. Bottas comes through turn 1, 2, and 3. And so far, the top 3 in the speed traps are 3 Ferrari-powered cars. The 2 Ferrari works cars and Romain Grosjean's. Gasly goes second in the Toro Rosso, and surely that's on soft compound tyres, because there's no way the Toro Rosso is that quick this weekend. As Antonio Giovinazzi has gone 9th, and Max Verstappen has gone 2nd and done the exact same lap time as Sebastian Vettel, a 1 minute 17.960. That is incredible. That's a rare sight in Formula 1. As Bottas on the hard tyres, I don't think is going to improve on this lap. He's not going very quickly. Let's see what he does when he comes to the line on the hard compound tyres. He does improve. He goes P7 with a green final sector. His first 2 sectors, though, he didn't actually improve on his first run on the hard tyres earlier on. As here is now a replay of Nico Hülkenberg locking the outside front going down to turn 1, and he also must take to the grass. Locking up at turn 1 is a thing that happens a lot for these drivers, because they've come off such a long straight down to such a heavy braking zone. The tyres and the brakes, you know, they go very cold, and then once they go down to turn 1, they've got to be slamming the brakes on, and that's why you see so many lockups down to turn 1, as Lando Norris also goes off at turn 1. And here's another car going off at turn 1. It's Daniel Kvyat. So many cars going off at turn 1. It's such a difficult corner, because again, it's such a big stop after such a high acceleration on the pit straight. As now Sebastian Vettel is coming out on soft compound tyres. So I think I will update the running order again after the soft tyre runs, because I'm expecting everyone in a moment to go very, very quick. As now Vettel comes out on track. Max Verstappen is now back in the pits, and he will presumably go onto the soft compound tyre. By the way, if you see on the screen cars with intermediate tyres on around this track, that is because these pictures are, of course, from practice 1, which took place earlier on. As Charles Leclerc is on the soft compound tyres and starting his first proper quali run of practice 2. Let's see what Charles Leclerc can do as he comes through turn 3. As Magnussen goes up to P14. And Charles Leclerc for the end of the first sector does a 27.2, I think. Yes, he does. So Charles Leclerc 2 tenths up already, and now comes into the middle sector. The sector where softer and fresher tyres really does make a difference, and throws it in. Car not looking as great as it will do later on the weekend, once they really start to push. And now Leclerc comes to the middle sector and is 7 tenths of a second up. So yeah, this is a very quick time. As he comes into turn 13 and into 14 and 15, the final corner. And Charles Leclerc will go P1 by quite a bit. Let's see, goes to the line and goes P1 by 8 tenths of a second. So that's about right in tyre difference between the soft and the medium. As now Sebastian Vettel starts his quali run on the soft tyres and will get a tow from the McLaren ahead. And Vettel goes 2 tenths faster in the first sector than Charles Leclerc alone. And now he comes into turn 5 and 6. And there's a Williams ahead that moves out of the way. Now into turn 7. He starts the S's. Let's see what Sebastian Vettel's middle sector time is like. It should be very, very good. As he comes up behind an Alfa, which moves out of his way. And Vettel is about 0.3 of a second up on Leclerc. So Sebastian is going to set a very quick time for practice 2. As he comes into the final corner. And he comes to the line. And Sebastian Vettel does a 16.6. 16.607. So Sebastian Vettel is P1 again by 4.5 of a second. And actually went 1.3 seconds quicker than he did on the medium. So a very big tyre difference between the medium and the soft compound, which again for qualifying and the race is very important data. As at the moment, most cars are actually in the pits. So I think I should probably update some of the order. So it is Vettel, Leclerc, Verstappen. Gasly has gone up to 4th. Again, though, I think Gasly was surely on the soft compound for that run. There's no way he did that on medium. Surely not. As Magnussen goes up even higher to 13th place. So yeah, Gasly is 4th. Hamilton is now 5th. As we're currently on the TV looking at Daniel Ricciardo in the Renault on a soft tyre run. Hopefully he can put his Renault higher than what it is right now, which is 17th place. And then, yeah, Sainz is in 6th place. And Ricciardo at the moment is probably going to go P5, P6 at best with this lap. And, yeah, Sainz is P6. Let's see where Daniel Ricciardo goes. Comes to the line as he's really wrestling the Renault. And Daniel Ricciardo goes 8th. So it's Sainz in 6th. And then it is Sergio Perez in 7th place. And then Daniel Ricciardo has gone up to 8th. And then 9th and 10th completing the top 10. The two Finns, Valtteri Bottas and Kimi Räikkönen, who I believe have done their runs so far on the hard compound of tyre. So they've got a lot more left in the bag. So look out for them once they get on the soft compound, if they ever do. And then completing the field, it is Grosjean in P11. Hulkenberg is up to 12th. Renault not looking as good as I thought they would. I know Ricciardo's in 8th place, but again, Bottas and Raikkonen, they can go a lot faster once they put the soft tyres on. Renault not looking that great, I have to say. And I assume that Renault are not allowed now to use that brake bias system now that it's been found to be illegal for the sporting regulation side of the regulations. So that might be a slight reason why. As Antonio Giovinazzi improves further in 13th place. Let me just update that picture. There you go, so you can get a better look of it. Rear end of the McLaren. Very nice looking car, the McLaren. And seeing a replay, I believe, of the Ferrari. Oh, getting a lot of oversteer in the S's, and Sebastian Vettel doing very well to catch it. It's a good driving by Seb. Grosjean, I assume, he's locked up both front tyres at turn 1 on his soft tyre run, and that's his tyres gone, basically. And yeah, locking up both front tyres is something that is a very big possibility, again, after coming off a very long straight to a very big stop. It's quite a common theme, let's say. So Magnussen is 15th, and then it is Kvyat in 16th place, 17th is Lance Stroll at the moment. Yes, it is. And then it is Russell, Kubica and Albon, as some drivers are now out on soft tyres and about to do their proper soft tyre run. So best update this now before everyone smashes it to bits. So they go Russell 18th, Kubica 19th, and Albon at the back. And I don't think Albon will be coming out on track until practice 3 tomorrow morning local time. So there you go. There is your running order. As we now have 45 minutes left, as now we cut again to Martin Brundle trackside at turn 11, the exit basically of the S's. Good place to stand, I'm sure, to see, what cars are really handling well in the fast corners. But at the moment, coming through those corners are slow drivers who are either locked up and made a mistake at turn 1, or, who have just come out on track. Finley, what happened to Albon? He crashed at turn 7. He went for a wide turn in for, of course, that fast left-hander, got too wide on the curb, and the curb basically spun him round. Clear driver error, and Albon is, out of the session, unless Red Bull can get his car rebuilt in the next 40 minutes, which I don't think they're going to do, because I don't think the Red Bull car is even back to the pits yet. And no, it's not. So they just showed on Sky F1 that the Red Bull car is not even back to the pits yet. So, yep, Albon, 20th, out the session. Let me look at some other comments quickly. Tonka, an ex-Renault employee, snitched. I wouldn't quite say that, because at the end of the day, that is why, smaller or different rival teams will hire people from rival teams to find out why this team they are competing against are quicker than them. So I wouldn't call it snitching. I'd just say Racing Point have made smart decisions when it comes to hiring. And I mean, come on, it was inevitable that he was going to spill the beans on what Renault were doing with their car. And Racing Point actually, before they filed a protest, they asked the FIA if what they believed Renault had was legal, and the FIA said no, so then they threw in a protest. The reason Racing Point asked if it was legal is Perez almost has a massive crash at turn 8, gets on the entry curve, and the car almost spins completely round. Very lucky Perez not to have a big crash there. But Racing Point wanted to know if it was legal, because Racing Point wanted to use it if it was legal, and the FIA said no, so then they put in a protest. So I don't think there was anything, untoward, really going on, as many drivers have come back into the pits. Hulkenberg, though, I've just noticed. And actually, I was going to say Hulkenberg. Daniel Kvyat goes 5th. So Toro Rosso are in 5th and 6th place. And Valtteri Bottas has gone up to 4th. Verstappen has gone up to 2nd. I was about to say many cars are in the pits still, but now they're all coming back out. So I'll wait to update the order until they start their race simulations, which really should be starting in a few minutes' time, as Russell is currently on a lap but not improving. He might be able to improve the final sector, but I don't know if Russell will improve his lap overall. Younger brother Hulkenberg snitched when he found out he wasn't going to drive for Renault in 2020. JB, I love the Mexican fans. They're probably some of the only fans who respect all the drivers. Most other fans boo at drivers who aren't their nationality. To be honest, I don't have a big problem with, the Italian fans booing anyone who isn't a Ferrari driver or Italian. I don't have a problem with that. It's just, natural sporting event. The problem I have with booing is when you boo or cheer, someone having a big crash. That is when it goes, over the line. But not because of necessarily that reason, but I think as Lewis Hamilton starts his first proper quali run for this practice session, they make the Mexican Grand Prix feel like a party. that is why this Grand Prix is so good, and that's why it wins I think the award for best Grand Prix of the season for the promotional side every season, basically, because they make the Grand Prix feel like a party and feel like a massive event, which for them it is. So, other Grand Prix have really got to take note of what Mexico are doing in terms of what they do to make the Grand Prix feel like a party. Make their Grand Prix better. But yeah, Mexico, one of the best races on the calendar, not from a track perspective, but from an atmosphere perspective. Definitely one of the best races. As Lewis Hamilton currently on his quali run, and let's see what he's done for the middle sector. Half a second down. That's quite surprising as he gets understeer into turn 12. And into turn 13, more understeer. Very, very poor front end. And now into the final corner. Slight understeer. But yeah, a lot of understeer in this Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. And he goes 5th. Yeah, they need a lot more front end downforce on the setup of their car, because that car was washing out a lot. As Lewis Hamilton also, I noticed, as they're showing it now, Lewis had a lot of brake dust coming out of his front brakes when he braked for turn 1, which is not the greatest sign that things are well with your car. As, let me just adjust this picture, the Red Bull from earlier on. And now we are seeing a Toro Rosso going quite slowly. But I think most drivers now are going to start doing their race simulations with 38 minutes to go, because they do need to get those in, and they do need that 38 minutes to get it done. So I think that should be starting in a minute. So because of that, I'm now going to do the finishing, or not the finishing order, but the running order for now, but it will likely be the finishing order. Sebastian Vettel is P1. Max Verstappen is P2 as the Toro Rosso Pierre Gasly slowing down, and they've now gone to an ad break, so I'll quickly rewind. There you go. So yeah, Vettel from Verstappen in 2nd, and then it is Charles Leclerc 3rd. So Ferrari looking a lot better at the moment than I thought they would be, but I do think Mercedes have a lot more to bring. They definitely can make an improvement on the setup of Lewis Hamilton's car, because that car looked as though it had no front end for a couple corners. And then, yeah, it's Bottas, Hamilton, P4, P5. Toro Rosso looking good, 6th and 7th at the moment. If they can be like that in qualifying, then that might be the type of result that beats Renault, the P5 and the Constructors later on in the season. And then, yeah, Carlos Sainz is in 8th place, still looking good for McLaren. And then completing the top 10, it's Nico Hülkenberg in 9th place and Lance Stroll in 10th. I will say I've noticed that Lance is slowly improving his qualifying speed, because in Suzuka he qualified 12th, I think, and then because of Renault's disqualification, I think he nicked a point in P10. So he's getting there, Stroll. He is getting there. He's improving. And his, I guess, mentor at the moment, Juan Pablo Montoya, who was a monster in qualifying. If you ever want to see a great qualifying lap, go and look at Montoya's from 2002. He was an absolute monster when it came to qualifying. And, well, clearly, he's helping Lance Stroll. But Perez is P11. And then it is Daniel Ricciardo in P12. Raikkonen is 13th, but I'm not sure if Raikkonen did that time on soft tyres. I think he did that on hard tyres, which to me illustrates that the Alfa is a bit better than we thought it would be. And then it is Grosjean in 14th place. 15th is Antonio Giovinazzi. And then in 16th place is Lando Norris, who I don't think has had the best session. gone off a couple times, I think. And then 17th and 18th. Or 17th is Magnussen, and then of course 18th, 19th, and 20th is as it is. Russell, Kubica, Albon, but Magnussen is 17th. And as expected, Haas F1 are miles off the pace. But again, we knew that would be the case in this Grand Prix weekend. And yep, Sky's still apparently on an ad break. And if we come back and they are doing the race runs or the race simulations as they like to do in practice too, then guys, in the live chat, suggest some talking points that you want me to talk about. Like what, stuff that's currently going on in the Formula One world, or just talking points in general to do with Formula One. Do you want me to talk about for the final 35 minutes if they are now starting their race runs? And yeah, suggest what ones you want me to talk about, and I'll talk about some of them before we come to the end of the stream. As we're seeing a replay as we come back from an ad break of Gasly at turn 12, locking up the inside front and then going off the track. Not crashing though, which is a good sign. As also Gasly gets a slow-mo. And now so does Carlos Sainz on the exit of turn 3. And Carlos getting opposite lock, which of course is not what you want. You're trying to set the best possible time. And yet the order, actually, no, I was going to say the order is as it is, but Lando Norris is now into P10. So let me update that. So Lando Norris up to 10th, and I do think, guys, that the race runs have started. So go ahead and, yeah, suggest your talking points that you want me to talk about, and I'll make sure to talk about as many as I can before we come off stream, just over 34 minutes time. But Norris going P10 puts Stroll in P11, and then Perez in P12. I don't know if Grosjean here is on a race run or a quali run. No, Grosjean is on a race run because he's not opening the DRS down the pit straight. But Stroll is now P11, P12 Perez, P13 is Daniel Ricciardo, Renault 9th and 13th. That's not exactly where they were hoping to be this weekend. And then it's Raikkonen, Grosjean, Giovinazzi, Magnussen, and the rest. Quickly do that. And go. So Grosjean in 15th and Antonio Giovinazzi in 16th place. But before we get into that, the talking points, let me quickly one final time read out the order, what it is right now for anyone who is listening but unable to watch. So it's Vettel first, then it is Max Verstappen second, then Leclerc, Bottas, Hamilton, Kvyat, Gasly, Sainz, Hülkenberg, Norris. That's the top 10. And then from P11 to P20, it is Stroll, Perez, Ricciardo, Raikkonen, Grosjean, Giovinazzi, Magnussen, Russell, Kubica, and Albon. The reason Albon is 20th is because he crashed out of practice 2 at turn 7. As Grosjean, yeah, is on a race run as he does a 1 minute 23 lap for his race run. But now, let's see what you guys have to say. See what the first talking point is. By the way, thank you, JB, for saying I did a great job on the F1 Debate Show interview. By the way, if you want to see that interview, a link to it is down below in the description. It's in between the two parts of the description. It says F1 YouTubers Decoded, and then my name, and then the link is there. So if you haven't seen that interview, and if you want to get to know me, my time on this website, and you want to know the man behind the content that is me, then make sure after this stream is finished to go and watch that interview. Anyway, let's see what the first talking point is. I think I just saw it. There you go. Mostly an F1 fan. What do you make of the environmentally focused press conference yesterday? I don't think there were even any questions about F1. Well, of course, this has come from Lewis Hamilton's. Let me just adjust this picture as well. This comes from Lewis Hamilton's post on Instagram about, being more friendly, being more green. I don't think it was necessarily the whole Instagram thing about, go vegan to save the world. It was more so just, we should be more friendly to our planet to save the world and stuff like that. From a personal point of view, I don't really care about environmentally friendly stuff. Not that I don't want us to be friendly environmentally to the planet. Of course I do, because we don't want global warming and climate change to happen and for the world to become a lot more of a unsafe place. But personally, I have a lot more things to worry about than saving the planet from, overheating in 1,000 years' time or whenever they think it will. But, I can understand why that was the theme of the press conference, because Lewis Hamilton got a lot of press for it. I mean, his press for that went into parts of the entertainment industry that's got nothing to do with Formula One or other parts of sport as well. So I think that's why it was, that type of theme. Also, kind of funny to see that, Jean-Eric Vergne responded to Hamilton's, I guess, call for action or call to action and said, come and join me in Formula E and we'll save the planet together. Then Lewis Hamilton just completely shoots that down and says, I'm not coming to Formula E, no interest. So yeah, that just shows you what Formula E means to Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, the journalists, they can ask whatever they want to as long as it's not out of bounds, if you know what I mean by that. But yeah, it was a bit of a weird press conference, but I think that was always going to be the way the press conference was because of Lewis Hamilton's Instagram post and the traction it got. Right. By the way, nothing in the running order has updated, so don't worry, you're not missing anything. I'll make sure to tell you guys if anything big happens in these final 28 and a half minutes. Jungle Brother, talk about Ocon and Ricciardo destination if Renault quit after 2020. Well, if Renault do quit after 2020, which is a big possibility, I think Daniel Ricciardo will be fine because there are going to be seats available in 2021, even if it's in a midfield team. There will be seats available for Daniel Ricciardo. For Esteban Ocon, it depends how he does in 2020. Because if he still isn't showing enough to be in a top team or to be a great driver or, has improved on his performances from 2017 and 2018, then I think Ocon will again be a test and reserve driver because I think in that midfield, it's hard to argue who he's better than, to be honest. But for Ricciardo, he'll be fine. I think, honestly, Ricciardo is in serious contention for the Ferrari drive to replace Sebastian Vettel for 2021 because Leclerc and Ricciardo are very good friends. Ricciardo also is, part Italian? He can speak Italian. He loves Italy. I think Ferrari definitely wouldn't mind having him as the Haas has really bad rear tyre wear on its race runs so far. So I think Ricciardo will be fine. He'll get a good drive somewhere else. Esteban Ocon, again, it depends on how he does in 2020. If he beats Ricciardo and, genuinely deserves it, then Ocon will get a seat, no problem, for 2021 if Renault do leave. But, 2020 for Ocon is a do or die year. If Ocon gets battered by Ricciardo, then I think Ocon is not done in Formula One, but I think the people talking about him driving for Mercedes or, a big team, I think that talk will completely die, basically. Right, let's look at some other comments from you guys. Find another talking point. Hello to Ronan Brady, great to see you. Jedi Master, should we have an electric Formula 1? No. I don't think we should. We do have an electrical element to Formula 1, as for some reason that is showing on the slideshow. I don't know why. I'll have to redo that in a moment. Yeah, Formula 1, has an electrical element, of course, but in terms of it going fully electric, I don't think that's going to happen, if I'm being honest, because Formula E, I'm pretty sure, have full exclusivity for an all-electric series until 2045. I think Formula 1, put it this way, Formula 1 will become more electrified as we get closer to, say, 2030, 2040, 2050, so on and so forth, to the point where Formula 1 eventually is probably going to be electric at some point. But from a, my personal standpoint, do I like that? To be honest, not really. I don't really like that. Of course, the sport can do whatever it wants, but again, from a personal point of view, it's not the greatest solution, in my opinion. There you go. Get this back up. For some reason, there was some error with it. There you go. Let me just adjust it a bit. But yeah, in terms of a fully electric Formula 1, it won't be coming for quite a long time. My opinion. There you go. Slideshow back up. Right, let's see what you guys... let's see what other talking points you have. By the way, looking at the TV, there is no difference when it comes to lap times, and no one is falling off the track. Ronan Brady Chazza, you should care more about the environment. Again, it's not that I do care, but I also don't care. I don't care from the point of view that I have more important things to worry about, but I do care about it, but just it's not, one of the most important things in my mind. There's a lot more important things in my life, going on than saving the environment at the moment. So it's not like I do and don't care, put it that way. It's kind of a 50-50 thing. Right, let's look other comments here. We do have an electrical Formula 1. It's called Formula E, I guess. Ronan Brady, would you rate the 2019 season as better than 2018? Yes, I would. The first few races, some of them were not that great, but since Austria, we've barely had a bad race. The only bad race I can really think of since Austria was Russia. Maybe Singapore as well, but Russia for sure was a bad race on reflection. But all the other races I think have been very good. And if the season started in Austria, we'd have such a good season at the moment. But I think one of the big reasons why the first 7 or 8 races were quite boring is because Ferrari and Red Bull had not made the improvements that they had in the second half of the season. If Ferrari and Red Bull turned up with the car they had, say now, or around Austria time, I think Ferrari and Red Bull would have given Mercedes a lot bigger of a challenge, and also the races would be a lot more competitive and better because of it. But that is, their fault for not giving the Silver Arrows a harder run for their money. Right, let's find other comments here. You guys, Ronan Brady, do you think Ricciardo will leave Renault at the end of next year, even if Renault stay? I think he will. If Sebastian Vettel's seat at Ferrari is vacant, then yes, he will be leaving Renault and going to Ferrari. I have no doubt about it. If Vettel stays, though, with Leclerc, of course, then that is where things get difficult, because he then has to hope that Mercedes would rather go for him over Russell for the seat at Mercedes over, say, Valtteri Bottas, or if Lewis Hamilton suddenly retires. But yeah, I think if Vettel does leave Ferrari at the end of 2020, which I think he will, because I think Sebastian is done at Ferrari. I don't see what Sebastian can do any more than what he's done. I think Ricciardo will be off to Ferrari. Let's find some other comments here if we can. Ronan Brady's saying, I think Red Bull, has dropped off a lot since the summer. That is a couple, there's a couple factors to that. One, Red Bull are not really developing the car that well. I think that's partly because they're looking towards 2020 and building a very strong car for 2020, but also because Ferrari, their big update that they had Ferrari in Singapore, is making Red Bull's car look a lot worse than it actually is. If that update didn't work for Ferrari, then Max Verstappen easily could have won in Singapore. He could have been on the podium in Russia. If Leclerc didn't take him out, could have been right up there, second, third place at Suzuka. So it's kind of for those two reasons. One, because I think they are really starting to concentrate on getting the 2020 car right from the word go, which is something, of course, they didn't have in testing in the first few races of 2019. But because Ferrari's improvement, their new updates they brought to Singapore, the front wing and rear floor, it made Red Bull's car look a lot worse than it actually is. It's still a good car, the Red Bull. It's just not being developed nearly as much as Ferrari right now. Right, let's find some other talking points from you guys that you guys want me to talk about. Jungle Brother, if you owned an F1 team, who would you hire to design your car? Adrian Newey, James Allison, or Ross Brawn? Adrian Newey, 100%. Because he is the greatest designer in Formula 1, has been, really, since he came into Formula 1 in the early 1990s. So it'd have to be him. And Newey is probably, I would say, the greatest designer in Formula 1 history. I know Colin Chapman was very good also, and he absolutely has to be mentioned with the greatest designers of all time. But, Adrian, he's been doing it for 25 years now, producing cars that aerodynamically are so strong and so darn quick. And he's had so many seasons in Formula 1 where he has helped design what's gone on to be that season the best car in Formula 1. So it would have to be him. Right, let's look at some other talking points here. As, by the way, we're currently on an ad break on Sky F1, so I can't see what's going on at the moment. Let's try and find some other talking points here if we can. James, can Ferrari hunt the Drivers' Championship this season? Well, officially they can't because they are too many points away to contend for the drivers. But they can get after Bottas. They can. Bottas is 60 points, 50 points ahead of, as Grosjean, I think, goes off at turn 1. Just seeing a replay of that. Is it Grosjean? No, it was Magnussen. What was I talking about? Yeah, Ferrari, they can get after Bottas because he's only 50 points ahead of Leclerc, but given how good Valtteri has been this season and how good that Mercedes car is, I don't see it. I think it will end Hamilton first, Bottas second in the Drivers' World Championship. Cesar, hold on, let me just find that comment. It's just gone away. Cesar Alves. Hi Chaz, hello to you. Is there any Brazilian rookie that can able to show up in the near future in Formula 1? Well, you've got Sergio Sete Câmara Pedro Piquet, who is a part, of course, of the Piquet family. You've got who's it? Enzo Fittipaldi. I don't know if he's Brazilian or not. He might be Italian. I'm not quite sure. I think he's Brazilian because he is part of the Fittipaldi family, so he should be. Yeah, there are Brazilian racing drivers out there, and don't worry, any Brazilian F1 fans out there. You will have a Brazilian racing driver back in Formula One. I know, you had a long history of Emerson Fittipaldi, Carlos Pache, who else? Ayrton Senna, of course, Barrichello, Massa, Pedro Diniz, Berti, Pitsonia, so many Brazilian drivers. You will have a Brazilian driver back in Formula One, no doubt about it, because Formula One does need Brazilian racing drivers in Formula One. They have been, such an important part of the sport's history. So we'll get one soon. It probably won't be for 2021, but once we get to, say, 2022, 2023, I think we will see a Brazilian racing driver, back on the grid in Formula One. And of course, that is something that, with Felipe Massa retiring, is something we have desperately missed in Formula One. Right, let's read some other comments. Tonka also is saying something that I do agree with. Norris has been inconsistent, although not all his fault, but Sainz has been awesome. Perez will do well in Mexico. He's talking about also his fantasy. But with you talking about Norris has been inconsistent, that is one thing I would like to make clear. If you look at 2019, and again, as he said, it's not all been Norris's fault. There has been races where he has been a bit unlucky, but Lando hasn't been as good as people make out. He really hasn't. Maybe he has been one of the top 10 best drivers this season. I could probably give him that, but he's been nowhere near his teammate, Carlos Sainz. I think other midfield drivers like Daniel Kvyat, Kimi Raikkonen have had probably more impressive seasons. It's been a good first year for Lando Norris, but it's not been, a wow type season like, when Max Verstappen came into Formula One in 2015. Or when, Hamilton came into Formula One. Of course, Hamilton was winning races and Norris can't do that, but it hasn't been the most impressive debut season for Lando, but he's still done well, just not as well as other drivers in the midfield, in my opinion. Right, let's find some other comments from you guys. Isaac M, please show the lap times. I am unable to, because I just don't have that data on my end to be able to do that at the moment for streams. But I will say that is something I am looking to bring to the watch-alongs for 2020. And of course, we are going to be improving the watch-alongs a lot, graphically, hopefully. And just the way, the shows work. So that might be happening for 2020. But for 2019, considering there's only 3 or 4 races left, I just don't have the time to be able to do that in a quick, good, and effective manner. As we now have 12 and a half minutes to go in practice 2, and the order is still the same, as it's starting to spit with rain apparently. Let's find some other comments here. Count Blanc, here it goes. You shouldn't tell someone what they should care about. It's their personal choice as it is yours. I'm not telling anyone what they shouldn't or should care about. It's just my personal thing. I personally don't really care that much about it. If you want to care about it, then go ahead, do whatever you want. But I have a lot more, important things in my own life to worry about than, bigger, wider things. Right, let's find some other comments here. Is the car fixed for Albon? Asks Mr. Labman. Nope, it's not. Albon is watching the session back in the Red Bull pits, as I think it is now starting slowly but surely to spit with rain. Right, let's find some other comments. By the way, Doom, who says there's no point making a comment on this channel because it never gets mentioned. I haven't seen it, so if you do want it to be mentioned, as long as it's not something rude or anything, then make sure to put it. I probably just missed it because I've been, looking at something else or updating the order or something like that. Right, let's look at some comments I haven't seen. Adam, let's hope Perez does better than last year here. Yep, he'll be hoping to. He was on for, I think, P7, maybe even P6. He was on for a really good result, and then it just completely fell away with, I think it was a braking issue, as one of the McLarens gets really out of shape on the entry to the S's. Right, let's find some comments. Ronan Brady, British media, mainstream media overrate British talent. Yep, it does happen. And I think also because Lando is such a personality, people think he's a lot better than he actually is. He's a good driver, still a very good driver, but he's not as good, or hasn't been as good, as Carlos Sainz this season, or again, drivers like Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Kvyat even. And after that, I think you could probably say Norris has been better than the rest, but he hasn't been as good as maybe people talk about him, in Formula One circles. Find some comments down here at the bottom that I haven't seen. F1 needs Mick Schumacher. Yes and no. Yes and no. In terms of the name and the popularity and crowd he'll bring to Formula One, yeah. But if Mick isn't good enough for Formula One but gets in anyway, then I don't think we necessarily need, to have that that type of situation where you have a driver in Formula One because of either their name or money and not performing anywhere near where they should be. So, I do want to see Mick do well, but I want Mick, if he's going to drive in Formula One, I want Mick to deserve it. I don't want it to be because he's a Schumacher. I want it to be because he is genuinely good enough to be in Formula One, which is why, he won't be in F1 for 2020 because he hasn't earned it yet. And I'm hoping that's the way he gets in, through earning it, not through, I'm a Schumacher and I get into the car. Because I think if he got into Formula One because of his name and wasn't ready for Formula One yet, it would actually harm his career because he would be racing with a lot of pressure at most likely Alfa Romeo or Sauber, or whatever team it's going to be in the future. And the pressure would get to him at such a, early, young age, and it would affect him. So hopefully next year in 2020 in F2, he can improve a lot. And if he does win the title, I think that's a guaranteed Mick Schumacher in Formula One. Right. Let me find some other comments here. You guys. Yeah, Tonka saying Mick did not do well in F2. Yeah, he really did not have that good of a, a good of a season. Did he win a race? I think he might have won one in Hungary, but I can't remember if it was the feature or sprint race. But, he's, it hasn't really come off for him. He has been unlucky in a couple races where he was looking great for like a podium. I think Russia, the last F2 race, Mick was on for a podium, and then I think he had an engine failure, but it was a very slow one, so it was, progressively going as the laps were going on, and he was on for a podium, if not a race win. So he has been unlucky, but most of the time he just hasn't been good enough. Right, let me find comments up here. Jungle Brother, Chazza, who's the most iconic F1 sponsor? John Player, JPS, who sponsored, of course, Lotus, Marlboro or Red Bull. It'd have to be Marlboro, because not only did their logo on the cars they sponsor, look so good, and the car livery that they were on, it was just such a nice look, but also the success they had in Formula One with McLaren. Other teams, I can't remember though who those other teams might be, but I know, of course, McLaren and Ferrari. Those are the two iconic Marlboro teams, I guess, that we had in the past. JB, I completely agree with Chaz. I got many things in my personal life to worry about over global warming. Again, global warming, it's a much bigger issue than just what we can do. It's a worldwide thing. Not one person is going to make that vital change. So it's not something, again, I'm massively worried about. Duke Gaming, I'm talking about environment, and Chaz are just talking about Brazilian drive and why they're important to F1. What a yoke. Well, they are. I mean, it'd be stupid, really, to say that they're not a very important part of Formula One. They clearly are. They bring, really, that South American audience to Formula One. If we didn't have Brazilian or even Argentinian racing drivers ever in F1, then we wouldn't have really any races in South America or an audience in South America, which would really affect, the global brand of Formula One. So that's why getting a Brazilian driver into Formula One, or a South American driver who is good, is very, very important. So hopefully that can happen in the future. But again, with the whole, the whole environment thing, again, it's important, but there are more important things that are more recent in terms of when they're going to happen than, massive amounts of climate change. So that's why I don't really lose any sleep over the environment, if I'm being honest. We now have, by the way, 4 minutes to go in practice 2. And the order is still Vettel from Verstappen, Leclerc, Bottas, Hamilton, Kvyat, Gasly, Sainz, Hulkenberg, Norris. That's the top 10. And then from P11 to P20, it's Stroll, Perez, Ricciardo, Raikkonen, Grosjean, Giovinazzi, Magnussen, Russell, Kubica, and Albon. As we just had a yellow flag in Sector 1, I'm going to assume someone has gone off at Turn 1. Let's find other comments here if I can that I haven't read out yet. And by the way, I can't answer everyone in the live chat. I'm trying to find the best comments I can, because obviously I can't read out every single comment because I'll be here all night answering comments. So I have to try and find the best ones to make the stream, of course, as entertaining as possible. As we're now 3 minutes away from the end of the session, as Carlos Sainz is continuing his race runs. Right, let's find some final comments if we can. Ronan Brady, are you still of the opinion Vettel is not world class? That wasn't really my opinion. I didn't say it was not world class, which is I guess a different terminology from what I was using, but I don't think Sebastian on a consistent basis is no longer a top driver. And you have to remember, there are not that many top drivers in Formula One right now. I mean, you've got Hamilton, Verstappen, and then you could probably put Leclerc in there. But again, you've got to be consistent. You've got to be very consistent in your greatness to be one of the top drivers in Formula One. And Leclerc, I think most of the time has been that. So I think you could put him in there. But Vettel still is making mistakes and is still not quite doing the best he could. I mean, look at Suzuka. Jumped the start, and then in the race, he was really lucky not to get a penalty, and he would have finished in third, and he should have finished in third place. So, I still think the same. And I think Vettel's upturn in form is because of the car. It's not because he has improved. And if you look since Singapore, Leclerc has still outperformed him, I think. In Singapore, the reason Vettel won was because Ferrari undercut him past Leclerc. Simple as that. Yeah, he did do a great outlap, but that is still a fact of the matter. That the reason Sebastian Vettel won the race was because he pitted before Charles Leclerc. If Leclerc had pitted before, Leclerc would have won. Pretty simple. In Russia, Leclerc dominated Vettel up until the race. Yes, Vettel in the race was very quick and was very good in the race, but it was kind of a two-ended weekend. Again, the first half of the weekend was not that good, but then in the race, he was really strong. So it was a good weekend, but it could have been better if he had put in a better qualifying. And then Suzuka, again, kind of similar to Russia. Very good qualifying, and then a meh kind of race. And that's not what a great or top driver does. A top driver can consistently put it together in a weekend most times out of 10, which is what Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen do. And you could argue Charles Leclerc does that as well. So, yeah, I still don't think he is a top driver in Formula 1 anymore, because I think it's become pretty clear at times that Sebastian is kind of a number 2 in that team at the moment, as the checkered flag has fallen and practice 2 is over in Mexico City. Let's just do the text there. FP2 is over, and there you go. Practice, as for some reason the text is gone. There you go, now it's back. So there you go, practice 2 is over. And it is Sebastian Vettel finishing P1 from Max Verstappen in second, Charles Leclerc third, Valtteri Bottas fourth, Lewis Hamilton fifth, Daniel Kvyat sixth, seventh is Gasly, eighth is Carlos Sainz, ninth is Nico Hülkenberg, and then 10th is Norris, 11th is Stroll, 12th is Perez, 13th is Ricciardo, 14th Raikkonen, 15th Grosjean, 16th is Antonio Giovinazzi. Charles Leclerc on his final lap of the session. Fun. Oh, Charles Leclerc is so lucky not to hit the barriers there. He spun on the entry to turn 8. Very lucky not to meet the barriers. Lucky, lucky boy. And then it was, Magnussen, Russell, Kubica, and Albon completing the field. But let's find one final comment before I come off. Let's just see if there's one good one. End the stream. Jungle Brother Chazza, who partnered Murray Walker better, James Hunt or Martin Brundle? I'll probably say James Hunt on that. Martin Brundle also was good, but they were only together for, I think, 3 years. James Hunt and Murray were together for like 13 or 14. So, yeah, great partnership those were. But let's now, quickly, before we come off, let's review who is looking good going into qualifying. Well, Ferrari are looking good, because normally, in practice, they aren't this good at a track like this. As we've seen replays of Leclerc spinning, and again, getting very lucky not to hit the barriers. So yeah, Ferrari are looking good. I will say, though, I think Mercedes have a lot more to bring once qualifying gets underway tomorrow around the same time of day. So I do think Ferrari, even if they do have a very good car, which is, for me, I guess, a bit unexpected, but they are going to have a fight for it, for sure, with Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen is definitely in there, but not quite looking as good as I thought it might be for Red Bull so far on the weekend. But Max is still competitive. I think Max can definitely contend for, say, P3 or at worst P4 on the grid. They're looking good and nice and close at the top. And then in the midfield, it's a lottery. Basically, I think McLaren, I still think, do have the best car in the midfield, but the gap between them and the rest is not that big. And then after that, it's probably Renault and Toro Rosso, about the same. And then after that, it's definitely Racing Point, just behind, I think, Toro Rosso and Renault. And then, really, Alfa Romeo and Haas are at the back end of the midfield. and then Williams are, of course, at the back. So a couple surprises. Again, Ferrari being as quick as they've been, and also, I guess, Toro Rosso being as quick as they were. By the way, Gasly finished in P7, and his time was on medium compound tyres. So very good for Pierre Gasly in the Toro Rosso. But guys, that has been it for this practice 2 watch along here of the 2019 Mexican Grand Prix. Now guys, before I go, just need to let you guys know of the schedule of content coming up tomorrow. So, qualifying officially gets underway at 7 PM UK time. So I will be live at 6 PM UK time, of course, for an hour's build-up, then the hour of qualifying, and then half an hour we'll be reacting to what's happening qualifying, and then at about 9 o'clock PM UK time, maybe 9:15 PM UK time, I will be uploading my review of qualifying, and then of course on Sunday we have the race. So do not forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or go to my homepage, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. And also, don't forget to hit the like button, because it does help out with the channel in terms of growing it, and it does show me that you guys like to see this content on the channel. Also, don't forget to comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below going into the qualifying session tomorrow, who is looking good and not so good in your opinion. And if you want to talk or continue the discussion of what I talked about in the final 35 minutes of this session, then make sure to do so if you want to, of course. Also, again, check out my interview that I did with F1 Debate Show, link below in the description, where it says F1 YouTubers Decoded. Make sure to go and check that interview out before or after, just after this stream does finish. And also, don't forget to subscribe to his channel as well. He's just hit 1,000 subs. And yeah, it'd be great to see his channel continue to grow, and they really do. And the boys over there at F1 Debate Show, they really do deserve it. So don't forget to do that as well. Don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. That's the best place for notifications of my videos and streams. And on an F1 race weekend, it is quite active. We have about 400 people in that server, so don't forget to join that. And also, like my Facebook, ChazzaHDF1. Let me just repeat that. ChazzaHDF1 on Facebook. I was tripping over my words then. That's what the page is on Facebook. Don't forget to go and hit the like button on that. Follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110. And check out my website, ChazzaHD.com, for more content like this. But guys, until qualifying tomorrow for the 2019 Mexican Grand Prix, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.